Hi all, I'm Dan Smigrod, founder of the We Get Around Network Forum. Today is Wednesday, October 5th, 2017. We're at SuperNova South in Atlanta. There's a great session coming up, AR, VR, MR, all kinds of initials in terms of new reality. We're about 25 minutes away from the program, so if you're catching this on YouTube, just fast forward about 25 minutes. Thanks for tuning in.
I'm the girl. You're that girl. Yeah. I'm the girl. He's not here, but he's further showing me. He's really straight. This is all stream right now. Okay, what is it then?
I'm the director of litigation development and trick treating. We are an immersive content studio, so we pretty much could do it 3D, do it anything from like architectural visualization, photorealistic renders, to then repurposing those assets for VR. We work with things like Delta, Holiday Inn, Georgia Power, and a lot of what we do is visualizing things that haven't been built yet. So, like, for instance, one of the recent projects that we just wrapped was with Delta, where we're visualizing one of their new aircraft in VR to help them make the final design decision, interior design decisions. So it's the first time that they made design
So they
decisions.
can like feel it.
Yeah. So they actually had a mock. They had some of the actual scenes fabricated, so they can actually feel it and things like that. But in order to see what it looks like, what a whole aircraft would look like, instead of mocking it up, you know, it costs. Yeah. They went with VR for
Table, like
the
a
final.
and now we have
They
we
see
I just
the
back to saying
styles.
I have a very short session tomorrow that I was preparing for my day. But I need to tell her what I do, I think now.
Okay.
You're with yeah, it is. I'm having a shirt now. You brought all your luggage. Did you come from the
Yes.
How was your child's
I'm moving
birthday
in.
party? Was it your
Hi,
son?
how are we doing? I'm good, I think. Yeah, I just can't remember work.
How?
I just landed.
Yeah, I know. I'm like, well, from getting off an airplane, you smell good. You had a son or daughter's birthday?
Youngest birthday.
Which one? Which boy or girl?
Boy.
Oh, right. Son's birthday. I remember.
Yes,
Jamie. This is my husband, Jake.
Jake, how are you doing?
This is Jamie.
Good to see you. Yeah, you too. I'll say it's all right. I come off the elevator, I was like, oh.
I know, right? That's how we all
Oh, so
Welcome to the death panel.
Awesome.
So Demika was just kind of getting to know us. Hi, I'm Demika.
Hi,
He's our moderator.
Jake, how are you doing?
I was just getting to know you. Yes, I didn't
It was the
know.
hottest room of all
I
time.
know. And we're gonna stand right
If
where
you've
the sun
just
is.
read the
So
UK.
you're gonna be right where the sun is.
Brilliant.
So I'm glad you all wore like something dark. I know, I'm like, I can't even take this off.
Oh,
I'm gonna pull it right here. Oh, you're the best. You can throw it literally anywhere. It's not probably very organized.
You can hide it behind this projector.
Out in the street there. It'll blend in with the wall. Those are very nice luggage pieces.
Yes, correct. So what?
Nice luggage pieces, so.
The boxes.
You
Yeah,
travel
baby.
along. Oh, yeah, so I mean, so you're in, futurist in the way to act around.
Yeah. Move the table up because
Let me go reset. Okay, thank you.
sorry about that.
That's okay. The sun coming in through the window is just nuts. That doesn't help at all. That's actually better for me, so that's great.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, it doesn't really get out of this.
I can't control the desktop right now.
Oh, it's not that.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
so I was looking at a silhouette of shooting towards the window there.
So using gaming technology, but making it more practical. And they usually fall under the training or marketing categories. And Jane, what is it that you do?
Get jet lag.
I'm the same, but I'm the same, but I wasn't travel.
Okay.
So that's the best
I
part.
think I've been on for about 20.
A lot, a long time. Are you able to sleep on the plane or are you not? First, where did you fly?
Manchester.
Wow, I mean, back here.
Just in time.
I'm more.
Landed at 3.
Are you gonna be at the jet tomorrow?
No,
I mean, from Newford's side, I would really care about.
So Jamie, what do you do?
it's real.
She needs to know.
I can just tell them, like, this is Jamie.
Sky's is an augmented reality platform. So we have an action for sales and VR. And our business plan is based on what you Sky technical application. Skies. I think signs in the sky.
Okay. Because my name gets messed up all the time, so.
Thanks for reaching out, period, in paragraph. I am connecting you with Tracy that can help you with the Atlanta townhome on the Belmont.
Okay, so from what I was told about this, it's easy to say. Everyone's like, how do you pronounce that? I'm sure they ask the same thing.
Skegness.
Yeah, I like to do that.
So what I was told is like, you know, I don't know what you guys were told, but,
Turn up. That's what
Turn
it
up.
Let's
That's
show up and
what I
talk.
basically what I was told is kind of we're going to talk about like the one-on-one, just like what is your technology, how it's kind of affecting marketing, and how it's like changing a lot of things. Like I think the most popular augmented reality is no contest Pokemon. My friend actually got an ask for it.
What? Please tell that story. I
I'm
mean,
gonna tell
on the
it.
camera.
And I told him, I was like,
No,
I'm
I'm
gonna
saying
use you.
you
I'm
never
never ready to. And he's like,
Totally.
no, he's like, okay. And I was like, you're the one who got arrested for playing Pokemon.
Yeah, that's
At least I
a
tell a better story. No,
That's a great story. Okay, well, I can't
So-
we'll leave it for surprise.
Mentioning Pokemon is a great area.
That's relatable.
It elevated people's kind of even, interest and knowledge base about Pokemon.
I think if people might not even know that that was augmented reality, like they can know
Yeah,
what
and
was
then they
happening.
can-
Yeah.
Absolutely, and secondly, I think, well, I don't know, we're using kind of 9-year-old technology. Really
Oh,
old
yeah.
stuff, really basic.
We were talking
really,
about that earlier.
Oh, really?
And all of those Pokemon are on your phone. They're not
I'm
in your
never played.
location.
Good. So people can stop getting arrested.
Nice, but it's just kind of interesting.
Well, I know. Well, that's like all of us probably make it our goals to break programs. Like it's fun.
So anyway, that's kind of what we're gonna be talking about. I'll sort of like mention those things that I think that's something people will like take around with and do it, play it. And then just really talk about every goal that
created
you
for that
are
to actually being on like
doing.
WGAN-TV.com. So it's just kind of like whatever it takes for them to get from, we want to run
I'm
ads
just kind of talking about what
to, hey,
the
we're going to the
platforms
website,
are
the ad
and how they're gonna look for. I think that would be one of the things around these. And then also, like, I don't know what I made up.
specifically for top media, so just all newspapers and radio. And so I have some-
What?
You're welcome.
I'm like, okay. Am I who you think I am?
Yes, it's.
So yeah, I was asked what the name says, if there are more agencies represented, maybe we can talk about like how.
There's about 15.
Yeah, yeah.
Maybe
But if
15,
more
like
like,
some of us have.
freelancers or in-house staff.
Yep.
So we have a lot of agency work, hoping it, but that's kind of.
That's good. I tried to do it 3
Oh, yeah.
That's just- We do.
I know,
We
there's
have
pros and cons.
access to being here, radio, television,
We saw it first on the street. She was
radio station.
I was just gonna say that.
And we, so I said,
I'm gonna ask a ridiculous question.
because they actually have like
That's a ridiculous question.
I'll walk with you. I think we have 15 minutes. I'll show you. It's not far, now. I know where it is, so I can teach
whatever digital ad, they can sell
right
anything to
downstairs.
anybody. Once they sell it, it's
Or
kind
it's through,
but I'm kind of in the middle of fulfillment.
I have my phone in my
I
bag.
can accommodate.
Yeah, I'm gonna go.
Million people have access to stuff.
Oh, I'll buy it. Let me
It'll
just grab my
show them,
wallet.
we sold it, here's what.
I didn't realize.
created.
No, I know.
Here's how
Don't
the
worry
pictures
about
like.
it.
What are you doing?
Original
What's
website.
wrong? Yeah, I'm gonna be melting some there so we can help.
Okay, we will be back.
Things like that.
It's really gonna be the Ellie show. Can I not rent that for that? Alright, I'm gonna make tea.
Everything has its
I'm
own
having a tea.
impression and
Oh, well, sounds.
So, they actually word over on West. And
And
then
then
like,
like,
it's
where
your
JC
realize,
it's like,
I don't know, you did stuff.
Okay.
really is, yeah.
You know, and people would go through and sit there and of course, the loudest people that like, hey, I'm what's my CPR? Exactly, yeah, yeah. And so then they try this at minimum.
Yeah, I live in
The
like
thing
town.
is our salespeople, they'll sell anything to anybody, so they.
Yeah.
And so
They serve wards.
it's kind of an ongoing battle of us trying to stay pushing up.
Yeah.
And then people still sell, you know, not being able to sell people $500 here, $100 there. Well, we gotta push it. Generally, if I'm saying about $500. Yeah. But the minimum really should be 15. Yeah, where it's like there and then also easiest thing.
Yeah.
And that's running something that are desirable.
So instead of having a bar.
But like that. Go around it. Okay.
Yeah. Well, especially we're dealing with, we have some, work with this one ramen shop, Round Tree, based out of New York, and they do this, it's called Mobile Precise. Pretty much what it is they own this ad network, thousands of apps, and they're one of their big apps is Waze. So whenever you're using Waze and you're using that geolocation data, they're building a profile about you. You know, your number. But this thing goes to a middle school at 3 o'clock, goes to a Whole Foods during the day, goes to Target at this time, and they say, real popular woman between this age and this age, this kid. So it uses your geolocation, route travel, day, this profile, and serves you ads.
Come back.
So that's actually, yeah, so you are. Yeah, so what'll happen is, whoever the seller is,
Even if it
they'll
lost.
sell this capability to, you know, so-and-so target. Hey, we can target these people, we can target, but then when it goes to us, then we work through this. And we have vendors, we have our own stuff. We use Google stuff
Like you're coming.
YouTube, and see it, you know. So we kind of have our fingers on a lot of pies, but yeah, so that's great, but I'm also married to Annie. So, yeah. Yeah, I saw that, yeah. Yeah, I probably don't.
I have it now, so this week there's also contracts going on.
Yeah, but I have, but what's, I was thinking because they're actually like, hey, we have boxes, this is a couple of you guys wanna go, so I'm like, hey, I'll go and I'll watch it. So I'm sure I'll swing by and I'll go, but yeah, so that worked out, so I was able to kind of, yeah. We were two neighbors. Really? Yeah. We were told, yeah, I was at the time, I had a background in graphic design, and I did that for about 6 years. And then, advertising.
Yeah.
TMD, worldwide, which is also based out of Sandy Springs. And they do recruitment advertising, so they help other companies hire people. So they're really big into, Walmart, biggest Target. I actually work with HP, right when HP split HP Enterprises, HP, Amazon. I work with Cox actually in the city city group. So pretty much if they're wanting to have a hiring initiative, instead of building their department to hire people, like I actually just switched all that hiring. Good idea. No, but that's right. Yeah, that would be pretty smart. It's a directed target.
Client.
See, that's a great opportunity. See, that's a great opportunity. You have that, you get some of that targeting audience and you dating yourself that way. Because your phone and your digital footprint knows more about you than you do. Did you ever hear that story? I think it was in time, but this one girl, her phone started showing her pregnancy ads. Before she knew she was actually pregnant, because the way because you scan things on your cartwheel app. You do this, you go to this place, you go to that place. Yeah, there's something like that, yeah, but it builds this digital, and it knows you better, it knows what you're gonna do better than that, but. It's pretty creepy.
I mean, you work
in a lot of ways, but, the way we do it, because if you're an advertiser, it's like, you're not really, you track this data, but it's really only to serve people stuff they don't want to see. And anybody else gets freaked out by it, but the truth is, it's like, you really want to show something whatever's most relevant, because otherwise you're wasting money. Right. Right. And the placement trade doesn't work anymore. Everybody needs to know exactly who's looking at what. And when I was at GP, we work in a lot of classic, we did billboards, we did radio advertising, and things like that. Yes, that's what I was working on. Yeah. And then I started getting into campaign management, and then that moved me over to the media group, and then that's when my team that I'm on now is running. And so,
All of that.
And I've actually in a building next to the campus, so I'm not seeing them on the other guys. We'll walk over.
Room A of Tower.
Yeah, they do. They're really big on that.
So they finally saw it.
All right. If you would be so kind, I'm going to come back and double check the end of the day. No, you can damage the what you want to do is, turn it off. Yeah. And then press power and then turn it off.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, it can damage the Wi-Fi. Yeah. There's a
there's kind of the movement of
power, the temperature will
auto trader.
Like when it's on, it's like they are constantly blowing it up. You get at that you turn it off, it's radiates.
I know.
Got it.
You're here, like, something exciting is about to happen. It's just like this whole.
Yeah.
Hi, how are you guys? Hey, I'm Chad.
Yeah.
Nice to meet you. I'm really glad you're aboard the session. I was just gonna introduce myself, because I know why you are. We used to work together for years.
Okay. Yeah.
Matterport.
That's not it.
No, we're just.
Oh.
I said,
And I'm not doing much back there. So, see there, everybody's exposed proper registration.
Yeah. They're just low down.
Everything is tucked away.
Oh my God. I was gonna say,
Oh, okay.
This is the hardest part. This is the hardest part.
About 10 years ago, I worked at International Tower, and I worked for a little law firm. They had final doors, and I worked in their IT department. And we would skip about 15 floors. They had the top floors, all the rest of us came down about 10 years. I call them that. So you know, like I said, the base of American Album down to 70%. Yeah, yeah.
And you wanted to ask me about.
So there are office buildings like.
Office stores.
Oh. And.
So I've been playing product management or customer success for SaaS.
Hi all, I'm Dan Smigrod, founder of the We Get Around Network Forum. You're watching WGAN-TV live at 5. Today, though, a special program. We're live at 4:30, just coming up in a few minutes from now. We're at SuperNova South. It's a conference with more than 100 sessions here in Atlanta. Today's session coming up at 4:30. Augmented reality, virtual reality, mixed reality. It's a panel discussion. There's 3 different digital agencies, VR agencies, AR agencies. So it'll be really interesting. I think it'll be a really good session for us. So you're tuned in to WGAN-TV live events for this week. We're at a conference all week long. Coming up tomorrow, Thursday, October 6, 2017, we'll be at Moxie for Moxie Future X Live. It's an amazing all-day conference, augmented reality, virtual reality, mixed reality, all kinds of things interacting with the brain and thoughts of making stuff happen. It's a little bit futuristic, and I think that's of interest to many of us that are almost living in the future. Buying our cameras that let us scan 3D, VR, shoot 360s, etc. We're in a little bit of a challenging space here because there's no curtains, and so unfortunately, if I set up this webcam facing forward to the panel, we would just be watching in the silhouette. So I've actually, we're going to actually see the side and of the speakers. Not the best setup. I had hoped to shoot with a 360 photosphere stream live with a 360 camera, and given the extreme lighting conditions with the bright sun pouring over all the windows without any curtains, that I've skipped that step today. So anyway, thanks for tuning in. Coming up just minutes from now. Right now it's 4:27. The program is expected to start at 4:30. It may start a little bit late, but it'll be really a great session. Augmented reality, virtual reality, mixed reality, 3 agencies in the VR, AR, MR space talking. So stay tuned. Thanks for tuning in, and be sure to tune in tomorrow as well to all day Moxie Future X live from Atlanta, Georgia. That was a great session. Very good to see how.
Yeah, but we do it differently every time, but yeah, we've done it a number of times. Yeah, we definitely made some time there. You never know what things will. We always have fun.
it, try to keep the energy higher.
Well, if you don't talk to them, I don't think you'll have an action.
Yeah, we play with off each other. One of us has a break. And we both do a lot of individual talking, but whenever we can do it. No, she's actually just lost. She was sick for a while last week. Very close to but AR covers some things. So what's the difference between AR and
Well, yeah. I mean, but now the sun's gonna be
as far as figuring, I mean, I've seen a lot of AR, using the code using animated characters on the table. Pretty big, so they do this.
I'm like, wait.
No, but as far as the agency, because most of them seen it's not just VR. That was the point of the question, because yeah.
You guys will sit right there. Yeah, don't worry. I told him.
Mark has some really cool, interesting things. Jane's actually
I went to a room earlier. Should I be like that teacher in the classical? Yeah, just like
You guys want to move to the front so we can all be like a happy family? Sit down. Is this mic good? All right, we'll get started. Just try to keep track of time. My name is Devika Rao. I'm with O'Neill Communications, and I'm the Vice President of Accounts and Clients, so I manage our portfolio. And I was really excited to be hosting this panel on virtual reality, augmented reality, and mixed reality. So we're going to learn a lot today by our experts. So I'm going to let everyone introduce themselves. Please speak into the mic. You've been forewarned. We'll have and then we'll get into it, and then we'll open up the floor for questions. How does that sound?
Great.
All right.
Hi everyone, my name is Jamie Clark, not Jimmy, Jamie, I have to change my accent. I'm the Chief Operating Officer of a company called Skynes. We do location-based augmented reality.
Hi everyone, I'm Annie Eaton, and I'm the CEO and co-founder of Futurist. We do future technology experiences, mostly with augmented and virtual reality. Oh, you have your own.
My own. Hi, I'm Elliot Rothman. I'm the Director of Innovation and Development at a company called Trick 3D. And we create virtual worlds. So we'll do photoreal renders for clients and of things that don't exist in the real world. And we'll do everything to virtual reality experiences.
That's pretty cool. So before we get started, I just kind of want to find out who's here on the agency side. How about independents and in-house? And anyone in technology looking to do all this stuff? All right. So just kind of figure out what everybody's looking to hear about. So what we're going to talk about today is really talk about these three realities these experts are going to talk about. So we're going to kind of tell you a little bit about what they are, And then we're gonna kind of dive into what this is gonna look like for the future of not only technology, but also marketing and how it's gonna develop for consumers, whether it's retail or we were just talking about earlier, conferences like SuperNova South, and other experiences that we all partake in. So I'll start with Annie, and we'll go for kind of, you were talking a little bit about virtual reality, but also a little bit about mixed reality. So can you sort of tell us what those are, and then we'll go to Elliot, and then we'll talk to you.
Absolutely, yeah, and that's a really good place to start to really define what we're talking about, because some people, especially if they haven't experienced it before, the terminology can be a bit confusing. So with virtual reality, we are experiencing these worlds with a headset or a head-mounted display. And with that, we are being immersed into a new location, physically still in your room, but you perceive yourself as being somewhere else. With augmented reality, you are seeing a digital overlay of that information onto your real world, and that can be done either by your phone or also a headset that has a transparent pass-through. And then mixed reality is kind of a tricky term because there are multiple definitions, but the one that we're kind of sticking with is what Microsoft is doing because they coined it. And it's kind of somewhere in the middle of the spectrum of augmented reality and virtual reality, but they pretty much mean that whatever you're seeing is reacting to your real world. So with mixed reality, we kind of drop it just to simplify things. We mostly talk augmented reality if you can still see your world, and virtual reality if you're completely somewhere else. So it might be easier for this conversation to drop mixed reality, even though people say it, sometimes it can just muddle the conversation.
Elliot, what about you and virtual reality and your student does?
Sure, yeah, so at Trick 3D, we work with some big clients like Delta Airlines, Holiday Inn, and a lot of what we do there is do visualization for things that haven't been built yet. So one of the recent projects that we worked on with Delta is visualizing the aircraft interior that's going to be redesigned. And so they're actually making final design decisions by using the visualizations that we created in virtual reality. So that's kind of what we do. We work with real estate companies, builders, to actually put the headset on and look around and see what the space might actually look and feel like. A big component of what we do in VR is making sure that we match the real world proportions, which in a game, it can sometimes not be as important, but if you're trying to really make decisions about like what the space that you're about to build looks like, you have to tell whether or not it's actually the right size. So we've developed some proprietary tools to help realize that stuff.
And James is going to talk about augmented reality. How many of you guys knew about Pokemon and played it, or new people? So that was a form of augmented reality.
I thought it easy bit.
So sort of wanted to set that up. So I just let you set up what you do with signs.
Well done.
Thank you.
Yeah. People read it and think sweetness, but it's not. It's signs. So if you think signs in the sky, that was the premise of the company in terms of being able to place digital helpful content anywhere on the planet, which is why I mentioned at the beginning it's a location-based AR platform, which is obviously different to image recognition or RFID in terms of the trigger. The trigger is the location where you are. We place digital content to help people engage and experience locations in ways that they'll kind of love and welcome and want to return to. So the easiest way to do that is to stand at the end of I'm going to go very English, so bear with me. At the end of a high street, in a town that you've not been to before, and you want to find where the bars are, the restaurants are, and the stores that you want to visit. The idea is that you can hold up your phone and digital signs will be outside of those stores. And obviously working with brands, working with stores, working with restaurant owners and all those types of things, you can press on those signs that you see and get offers downloaded straight to your handset. As simple as that. So making AR both engaging and useful.
Sounds very interesting. And it's going to change the way I think we're all going to consume information and have experiences as, that we're getting smarter phones than the smartphones we already have. So I wanted to talk about this technology and how it's really starting to shape the way, like we just talked about experiences. So you talked about a little bit of your project with Delta. So whether you are in, say, a B2B industry or you're in a technology space, where is this technology? I think we're scratching the surface on what this technology is about to do or can do. So where are we realistically, and where is it actually going to be going in terms of whether it's marketing, whether it's technology development itself, and just how we're all going to be interacting with it in the future. And the future can be like 6 months from now. So.
Before we answer that, you promised if you brought up Pokemon Go, you'd tell us how your grandmother read.
I forgot quickly. Oh yeah, so the reason I brought up Pokemon is one of my really close friends, who I got clearance from, by the way, I'm telling the story. We might not be friends after this, but he got arrested in Piedmont Park for playing Pokemon because it was after the park was closed. So he called us all, and guys have been like arrested, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is the best story. Like, I think you got in a fight. Like, I was ready for the cool story. He was playing Pokemon in augmented reality, so kind of a badass if you think about it, but not really. So I told him never to tell that story on a date because I don't think it goes well. So
That's right. It made me interested in the story.
I know. So that's my friend.
Well, to answer your previous question about where this technology is going, some of us, actually all of us, have probably been working in it for years now. So we've really seen it change. We got into it before most of the headsets were out. We had developer kits that were super primitive. And now that there are commercial devices for many of these platforms, we're really at a good baseline for the technology to advance. So similar to computer programs or apps, they will most of the time work on the headsets that you have purchased this year. That's great because the content can be used throughout time. The only thing that will happen is it'll get better. The graphics will get better, the headsets will get lighter, and that's a really great thing for us as content producers. So I think that's probably the biggest thing to note about this year is that there have been so many consumer releases that you're safe now buying the technology and buying the equipment to where you're not going to have to necessarily refresh it. Like, maybe you do want a 65-inch 4K TV next year, but you can still watch your shows on the TV you have now. It's kind of like that. So that's a good thing for people to know, especially businesses who want to integrate it into their services or marketing plan or storytelling right now. They can do that, and they can know that they don't have to buy all new equipment next year to keep using it at events and trade shows.
Yeah, I would agree with everything that Amy just said. And kind of like you just mentioned, the future could be as soon as 6 months. 6 months ago, I would have said that where we're at currently in virtual reality is a major focus on gaming, and I think that has changed today. In fact, Microsoft just had an event yesterday where they announced their fleet, I guess, of mixed reality, what they're calling mixed reality headsets, which are, for all intents and purposes, VR headsets, with the ones that are coming out soon. But their focus had nothing to do with gaming. It had everything to do with B2B. How one of their case studies was showing that Ford, how they were using it internally, and actually they were using the HoloLens in this specific example, which is an augmented reality headset, but they're making design decisions based on what's being overlaid on top of an actual vehicle that they have. There's a lot of other companies that are using it in that capacity as well. So I think we have arrived where virtual reality and augmented reality technology is now applicable to business applications, and it's ready to be used.
Yeah, I agree. I think just going off what you were saying around kind of the speed of the immersion, if you like, to keep it nice and easy. The biggest difficulty I have is, or one of them is keeping up with the announcements. So I had a meeting in the UK yesterday, and as we were in the meeting, there must have been 19 or 20 tweets went out about, oh, we're doing this with AR, or we're doing this with VR, or some stores, you know, doing, I think there was one, Kate Spade in New York was doing something, and then it just followed, and it keeps following, and it's kind of, it feels like every hour somebody's done something with AR or VR.
Anything else you
Yeah, another example, and this is really recent, is there is a social platform called All Streets VR. If any of you have not experienced it yet, you can actually experience it on your computer or your mobile phone without a VR headset, but it's cooler in VR. But they, about a month ago, maybe a little longer than that, they announced that they were closing shop, like they were totally closing the platform. Then about a week after that, they had exciting news that they were reopening the platform, and then we found out yesterday that Microsoft acquired them. So it really changes that quickly. So when he said like 6 months ago looked completely different, that's a totally true statement. And one of our jobs, all three of us, is just keeping up with the content. So you guys can talk to us and we'll tell you the latest and greatest. But just like that, I didn't see that coming. I knew someone probably big had something to do with it, but it's just crazy how quickly things can change.
So when you're talking about these things getting acquired at such a quick pace, when they're getting developed and getting advanced at a quick pace, and it's hard to keep up with technology all the time. You buy a new phone, the next day they release a new one, and you're kind of mad about that. But how is this going to sort of start affecting, let's bring it to a very consumer level. Like we were just talking about Pokemon and everybody was excited. They may not have even known it was a form of one of these realities. So how is this coming down to a consumer level? So whether it's a business trying to use this technology to figure out how they're going to put a product out, whether it's a building or a plane or a concert or anything else, as content producers, how are you bridging those gaps into all of us who are just kind of living day to day?
So I think to answer that question directly, I think one of the most direct applications is actually augmented reality, a lot of what Jamie's company works on. What's exciting about augmented reality is it can work with a headset like the Microsoft HoloLens, but it also can work with the phone that you have today in your pocket. Apple just released their AR kit, which works as far back as an iPhone 6S, I believe. And then Google also released their AR Core development kit, which works as far back as Samsung S7 and Google Pixel. I think it works with the original one. But what's exciting about that is everybody's got a phone in their pocket. Everyone has the capability to use augmented reality. And so by pointing the camera at something, you can instantly now find out more information about what it is you're looking at with an application like Jamie's company has. But you can also drop things into the real world space and interact with them. So Pokemon Go is a good entertainment example, but there's other things that companies are doing. So I believe it's IKEA released their AR app, which with that new technology can measure real world space. That's one of the new advancements with the AR kit and the AR Core is it can sense what the real world measurements are. So you're not just overlaying an image like with Pokemon, you're just sort of, the character appears to be in the space. But now you're actually taking into consideration real world measurements and then seeing what that couch might look like in the corner of your wall, or what that chair might look like in the corner of your office that currently has an ottoman that you want to throw away. So I think for consumers, we're going to see AR quickly get adopted.
Yeah, and on that note, there's something called the Gartner Hype Cycle. I don't know if any of you guys follow that, but they put out a hype cycle every year that has kind of a curve of where future technologies are. And right now, it has augmented reality kind of at the bottom and what they call the trough of disillusionment. And then they have virtual reality actually farther than that in the slope of enlightenment. You guys, a lot of people think that augmented reality is winning right now. I hate to look at it that way because the technologies both are so interconnected in ways that developers understand that they really are kind of help pushing each other along. Like they're kind of hopscotching over each other, or leapfrogging, not hopscotch. Got my children's games mixed up. But so I think that the fact that virtual reality has now entered this slope of enlightenment is why people are now saying, oh, well, virtual reality isn't moving as quickly as we thought it was. And everyone made such a big deal about it in the press that that came as a surprise to some people, that it just didn't instantly work like, I guess, some of the movies that you've seen in the 90s, like immediately. And augmented reality right now is amazing, and it's such a great way for consumers to get involved instantly because of the smartphone, that now it's in the trap of disillusionment, which means we all think it's winning, when in reality it will go back up that peak, and then it'll eventually become the technology that we want it to be. So they all take that path, and we all get really excited, we all freak out about it, and then there's kind of a disappointment as the technology advances where we realize what it really is. So I guess I'm just saying, as consumers, don't think that AR is winning necessarily, even though it is more popular and easier to access right now. I think they'll kind of both pull each other until they're kind of just one blended reality.
I think, I agree completely. I think it's almost about finding the space, isn't it? It's the kind of helping each other, as you say, and people view it as a bit of a competition that isn't,
Yeah.
to be fair. But I think it's very much it's almost an evening out of what those uses are, where the best use of the technology is, and how it gets adopted on a mass level, to be honest. And you're right to mention AR Kit and AR Core, because they're just pushing it kind of in the limelight, as we say here.
And you talked a little bit earlier, I think, Amy, where you just mentioned that there's a lot to keep up. But all three of you said like this changes every day. So what are some other challenges you guys are seeing in terms of this technology and how we're bringing it into this fusion of consumer content producing, and what does content producing really look like for AR and VR?
Well, it kind of starts out very similarly. With every project that we do, we go into the room not necessarily knowing which type of technology we're going to use. We're kind of different than Skynes because they are all AR. Like, they have a product, and we're more service-based, I think, and you guys are as well. So we get to kind of make recommendations to our customers on which is better for them at the time, and kind of what their audience is, how they're intending on using it. So if it is like we have one right now that we're doing that's a CAD model of really big machinery that people can't take to trade shows, but they really want to show it off, but it's something that you get custom built, so you can't actually show them a demo of it. It's just more abstract until it's actually, you purchase it and it's put together in your space. So we did a sample of one of their robots, and it actually animates, it does everything it's supposed to in fully rendered 3D. And now they're able to take that as an experience. You can walk around it. We're using a system that has something called positional tracking, which means it's run off of a computer. It's a higher powered experience, and you can actually walk around physically, and it's reactive in the programming. Unlike Google Cardboard or Gear VR, where you just look around like this. People also have yeah, so with that, they are now able to basically bring their product anywhere and have people examine it to its CAD model specifics to help them sell their products. So that's a virtual reality experience that we would pitch. On the augmented reality side, if someone wants to visualize something actually in the real world, then we would do that. Training can be the same way. On the VR side, it's if you're putting people in danger or in a hazardous situation and you want to train them on their muscle memory. Muscle memory to performing tasks. That's VR. On AR, maybe it could be more helpful in an actual manufacturing situation where they're actually scanning items on the line or a piece of equipment and getting information on that in real time. So there are pluses and minuses to each technology, and for us, it's really taking the time to know the needs and then coming up with a solution to fit that.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, one of the questions that we ask when we are talking about a new project with a client is, what is the goal? How are we measuring success? What does that look like? And a lot of times that will immediately affect the direction we go with the project. Sometimes they just want to show what something that hasn't been built yet, looks like. They want it to look beautiful, they want it to look photorealistic, and sometimes that project ends up being a two-dimensional render, 3D object. But if the goal is to experience interactivity, to see what it's like to walk around something at real-world scale, then we start talking about the virtual reality or the augmented reality component. Does the client want to feel fully immersed in the environment? Well, then virtual reality makes sense. When I explain it to some of our clients, I say, well, virtual reality is kind of like headphones for your eyes, right? It completely takes over your senses. It transports you to another place that you don't want to be, potentially. Augmented reality is taking into consideration the area around you and then merging that with a digital reality. So that affects how we recommend a solution. It's really, what are you trying to accomplish and how can the technology help that?
I've got a good example of that. We've been doing some work recently in New Zealand with a large scale project in terms of building housing in a wooded area that they've now chopped down, unfortunately. But they're building a number of different apartment homes, a number of different kind of shop fronts and different things. And they want to show off what's going to be there in those different locations to obviously prospective buyers. So we're placing images of those apartment blocks, images of those storefronts, so that people can actually interact with them and press on it and be taken to a fly-through of what that kind of the inside of that apartment might look like, what type of stores are going to be there, all of those types of things. So there's lots of kind of different ways to kind of get immersed in it without being immersed in it, if that makes sense. That's where there's a lot of crossover, obviously, as we keep saying. But being able to see what your apartment's going to look like that you bought off plan, in the middle of the woods, it's going to look really good through you, as simply as looking through your phone or an iPad. That's pretty cool. Since the sun just shot right into my eyes, I'm going to go ahead and open this up to questions. And go ahead, the first one. Sorry. Well, do you want to know?
Oh, yeah. We can sit in front of the pool.
Oh, no, it just shot like.
No, can we though? Can we
Can
go
we
right
sit in
there?
front of the?
Yeah.
We're moving our chairs.
I melted about
We are all
12 minutes
melted.
ago.
Well, we'll go ahead and ask your question.
Yeah.
Oh, did you say you wanted to?
No, I think the question, we have the questions.
It's like 15 degrees.
It's like being in England.
That's Jordan.
Yeah.
So my question is in regards to the B2C applications. It seems like augmented reality is more point of purchase, and virtual reality is bringing people to a location, remote. Does that make sense in the applications? So I'm thinking, has anything been done for virtual reality? Has it car test drives or realtors selling houses, or you talked about the master plan community? Also in virtual or augmented reality, things like hotel rooms or some scuba at, I would say, resorts, or some Caribbean location. You walk by and see the scuba, you can actually see augmented reality, the fish and everything underneath before you go. That type of thing has been done. Or like tables at restaurants, when you open table changes, because open table you can make a reservation, but then maybe you can actually reserve a certain table. Things like that. Has that been done before? And I guess even further, another application I was thinking, I don't know anything about virtual reality, it's just my mind spinning about even for say there's a fire in this large building that's filled with smoke. With augmented reality, can the first responders actually see the building and where it's on?
It's a great, I'm so glad you mentioned that. I was talking to a guy from the FBI, and that's a bit of a deal with your English, by the way. Talking to someone from the FBI. In a nice way, just to be clear.
And you're spread up against the wall.
Yeah, we're talking about kind of from a first responder point of view, obviously thinking about natural disasters, and it got a lot of conversations happen, obviously with recent events with Irma, and what happened in various parts of obviously America in terms of the natural environment moving, but our skies wouldn't move. So, for instance, being able to highlight fire exits, being able to highlight people to help. So it isn't just about being able to place the content in a physical location that we do. We also have the ability to place a sky, as we call it, above your head. So we can find you in, in a sandstorm, in a smoke-filled building, or in a festival, to put a bit of a nicer element on it. In a festival or a pop concert, you want to find your friends, you hold your phone up, you've got a sign above your head. Obviously, that can be limited to your only friends and your network. It doesn't have to be kind of cool. But those types of things are doable now.
Yeah, as far as B2C VR is concerned, one of the barriers to entry is the actual headset itself. AR currently is really nice because it'll work on a device that everybody has in their pocket. But we do have some clients that do use virtual reality to help sell real estate, for instance. One of our clients is Pinewood Forest, south of Atlanta, and they're developing these new homes. And in the leasing office, or the sales office, you can go in and they actually have a headset that you can try on and see what the house might look like before it's actually been constructed. So we're not relying on the consumer themselves to necessarily provide their own headset, but in that situation, they can go, with some guidance and actually experience VR.
But in the future, we'll probably already have them, even if it's like a home being sold for a second time, you can go look at it virtual reality.
Yeah, and that kind of brings it over to 360 video. So I know a lot of realtors now are using 360 photography and videography to do that. And the good news is they're not limited to the device. They can have that embedded in their website. People can do that by clicking and dragging a mouse, or if they want to be more immersed, they can do it in a headset. So much of what you've discussed is already underway, if that excites you.
I just sold my house from Matterport.
Oh, yeah. Well, Dan, the Matterport guy, is like right here.
there.
He just did our office a month ago, I think. And it is amazing. People love it, by the way. We love it. Oh, well, yeah.
Well, thank you. First,
You. Okay. So one of the things you guys talked about, so Ellie, you talked about like facilitating visualization for things that haven't been built yet. And it was intriguing when Jamie was talking about like placing digital content. How are you guys, like, if you have somebody who's immersed in the experience, but they don't necessarily know how they're reacting, like, are you using any sort of artificial intelligence or other kinds of technology that contemporaneously examine how people are reacting? Like, are you gauging that? Are you measuring that? Like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
Like physiological, voice, emotion, etc.
So currently, we are not doing it in real time, although we're very close to that. It is possible. We do have, there is VR analytics exist right now, and they do a variety of factors. They can track, if we're talking about just 360 content, it can track hotspots, so it'll determine the path of where people's headset are focused. And you can review that information. So over time, you can aggregate that. You can see, okay, the majority of the people focused on this particular area of the experience for this amount of time. And then you can extrapolate that however you need to. For actual real-time interactive 3D content, you can actually take that a step further and track when somebody interacts with an object in the scene, at what point in the experience did they find it, were the controls difficult, and you can tweak the experience based on that. Currently at Trick 3D, we're not necessarily doing artificial intelligence to alter the experience in real time, but we're very close.
Just from an AR point of view, we run a lossless system. So every interaction with every piece of digital content in any location is obviously recorded and analyzed as we move through it. We're trying to build, or we're finishing off building some AR analytics at the minute. So if somebody presses on a scan 9 times in 1 minute, obviously there's elements there, and it'll track them all the way through exactly where they go within that. Because if we place a deep link into a scan, and somebody presses in, it goes into X website, and then they go from there into somewhere else, we'll be able to track exactly where they go. So from behavioural, no, but in terms of that, it's more linear, I suppose, in terms of the
Yeah, on the AR side, we have a couple things in the works on the consumer packaged goods side. So actually scanning a product or a logo and having an augmented reality experience pop up. And with that, we're able to get how many people scanned it, their geolocation, things like that. That's more just for the analytics side of proving ROI. But on the VR side, we actually have a retail testing solution that we've been working on where you're building out stores, and we put test groups kind of similar to a focus group through the stores. And we are able to detect things like Elliot said with the heat maps as well as when they select items. We're able to go so granular into that we kind of have to pull it back and decide what people actually want to know, because that's the difficult part is we have access to so much information. We really have to refine what the goal is, or find what the goal is, and then refine our findings to that. But we can go as far to have someone pick up a package and look at the different sides in the VR environment and know which sides they actually looked at, how long they looked at each side, if they actually read the packaging, things like that. If they picked up two products in a competing category and made a selection over the other, that's the type of stuff we're doing as far as data analytics. But that is specifically for customers who are using virtual reality for testing. So they want to get really into it. And then there are also things out there where you're getting, I guess, a new experience depending on your biofeedback. So I have experienced something like this. We didn't produce it, but there are some experiences out there where you'll have a heart rate monitor, and it's a horror experience, but if you get scared and your heart rate goes up, it gets scarier. So not my favorite thing, but it is something that people are doing with what you said, where it reacts based on feedback it's getting in real time.
Yeah, I want to add one thing to that too. There's other sensors that can be very interesting when coupled with virtual reality. For instance, there's a company I believe called Mindwave that has a very, I wouldn't say rudimentary because it's more advanced at this point, but it's an accessible EEG machine that'll hook up. There's a sensor that goes right on your forehead and then one that clips to your ear. And it can measure levels of focus and relaxation. So kind of similar to the heart rate monitor, it can tell if you're relaxed or kind of stressed out. It can also tell if you're focused or unfocused. And those two values are not mutually exclusive. And so you can react in real time with that sort of data and alter the experience around you.
So my question was more along the lines of, right now these are kind of discrete experiences. So we're stopping, we're doing things. But in terms of the ergonomics of them, they're still not great. We don't have that awesome and yet stylish Google Glass experience going on yet. What do you guys see as the barriers to that, or how close are we to improving the ergonomics on the visors so that they can be more seamlessly, or it's not like I'm having to look through my phone to walk down the street. I can get those times through my glasses or so.
Yeah, it might be closer than we think because I'm going to say what they're about to say. I'm going to do it.
We'll drink coffee.
Yeah, so we don't have exact details on it yet, but there's a company called Magic Leap who is basically promising something similar to that, or at least there have been rumors something similar to that. And they have said they're going to have some release, maybe to developers. We don't know exactly yet. As
Do you really believe them? I've heard a lot of conflicting
stories about
that's why I'm being hesitant with them.
They're very secretive. I know they're called Magic Leap. You know what I'm saying? I know they're called Magic Leap. I call them Magic Trick because I'll believe it when I see it. But for all we know, as we said earlier in this panel, things change every day. If they are going to do what they say they're going to do, we can have that next year. I still think that whatever that device is still going to have to be tethered to something heavier, whether it's a phone or something else. That's why the Microsoft HoloLens is so heavy. You're basically wearing a computer on your head. And while the HoloLens does some really cool stuff, you can't wear that more than 10 minutes without getting a headache. So I definitely get where you're coming from. If I was going to give a more comfortable, I guess, projection, I would say 3 to 5 years, but we'll see what Magic Leap does. Google Glass has reemerged this year with their Enterprise Edition. that clips onto any eyewear. So, and we're in the middle of going through the partner program, so hopefully I'll have that soon. But with that, it's great in the industrial setting. I know it's not consumer, but you can attach that to your existing PPE and safety glasses. So if that goes well and things evolve, it's all about computing power in a very lightweight situation. And as things progress, everything gets smaller. I mean, we saw it with phones. They got really, really small. Now they're big again. But we'll see what Magic Leap does.
Can you expand a little bit on what is
Magic? Oh my
gosh.
gosh. Who wants to take it? Someone else. You do it.
Now, don't quote me on this. It's being recorded and everything. Allegedly, Magic Leap uses some sort of different way of projecting images onto your eyes directly, as opposed to looking at a screen. Because the way that virtual reality headsets currently work is actually a flat screen, the size of a phone, or in some cases an actual phone, and then you're using plastic or glass lenses to then separate that image left from right. The way that Magic Leap allegedly works is by projecting the images directly onto your eye itself, which would result in a much smaller form factor, much lighter weight device, and then also allegedly a much better picture, and allegedly can transition from a completely immersive VR experience to a semi-opaque augmented reality experience. It's very exciting, but I don't think anyone has seen it yet. So,
thank you.
Yeah.
What he said. Allegedly.
Any more questions?
I got a question.
Oh, she had her hand up first.
Oh, that's okay. Oh, I was just curious, I mean, in terms of the clients you described, like, how do they find you or have the creative thought to even go look for you? So, like, for example, I'm in the design field, I work in an architecture firm, and so we're working with clients all the time to help them visualize their space, and obviously we think of VR as a fantastic tool to do that. But when they, like, how does like the example you gave about equipment is super interesting, or Delta, who are your clients? How are they even thinking to contact you and look for you?
Well, I speak at a lot of conferences, but I guess if we're targeting people and we're really looking to kind of go out and do boots on the ground sales, we target companies that have an innovation budget, because they're the ones, and those are generally much bigger companies, they're the ones who are going to have kind of the flexibility in their budgets to spend on something that hasn't been proven yet. It is changing now that there are more experiences out there, and we're a little more refined with, I guess, our strategy behind the experiences. That's getting easier, which is good. So the project I mentioned earlier about the CAD models and the robots, like, that's actually a startup, and they're able to do it now because they have a new marketing team who really wants to use the technology. So we either have to go and do these educational sessions, like we'll go into big companies a lot and just do like a workshop or a day, or we'll go in and introduce the technology, educate about it, really answer people's questions, kind of like what we're doing here today, and then bring demos for them to experience. And I feel like for a lot of people, once they finally try it and understand like how impactful it can be, it's a lot easier to get someone to pay for it. And yeah, that's why events and trade shows and things are such a good place to create these experiences for, because we are able to bring people outside of that event and into the brand story. So yeah, we work with a lot of marketing people and a lot of CIOs, like innovation teams. Those are probably the two groups within a company that we will target.
Yeah, for us, I don't want to say it's easy, but we've been around for about a decade, and originally got our start doing architectural visualization. So we would work with an architect, for instance, and then create the photorealistic renders. And then over the years, started incorporating things like virtual reality. So once we've worked with the client for a certain amount of time, we already have those assets built and can repurpose them from the photorealistic renders into a real-time game engine, for instance. So once we establish a relationship with our clients, they can see what else we're capable of. So again, I don't want to say it's easy because business development is not my area of focus, but so it seemed easy for me, right? But I think having our ongoing relationship has exposed our clients to what else we're capable of doing.
I do think that, I mean, there's a theme obviously all the way through in terms of the ecosphere is growing. People know kind of where to look almost. A lot of people that have found us on social media, or they've found somebody like us on social media and spoke to them and then spoke to somebody else and then spoke to us. It kind of grows and grows and grows every day. And people, when Mr. Cook says AR is going to be like eating 3 square meals a day, everybody automatically goes and looks for AR. When other people talk about VR constantly in the news and there's different things going on, people will go and look. They might not be experts in it, they might not know the difference, but they'll go and look at it. And I think that happens kind of, as I was saying earlier, hourly. People look at it and they go, oh, give it a go, actually, because I always think that the kind of back's been broken on it in terms of people have tried it, people have done that first, so now we can go and do it.
Another question.
So when you guys are in development and pre-production on these, especially like when you're in your meetings, you have quick sketch artists that are kind of sketching out ideas as you're throwing things out, and you get into doing storyboarding as figuring out what you're going to put together.
I'll start just by reiterating what you said. I think an awful lot of kind of friends and competitors and all those, they all do kind of a similar process in terms of, at the minute we sit and we talk about what your outcomes are, what you want to gain by it, where you want to go with it, all of those types of things. And then kind of the second part of that process is sitting in a room with a whiteboard, with an iPad, with a MacBook, with your laptop, whatever, and working out what that's going to look like and what that whole process is going to be. And it's almost kind of a learn together process that moves everything forward.
Yeah, that's the process that you described is sometimes the way that we work, but also depending on the client, we've worked with them before when we're doing another project that's using the same assets. We've actually started using VR as part of the conceptual phase. It'll be very rough, it won't look very pretty, the scene won't be lit necessarily, but we'll take a model that we already have, for instance, that we're repurposing for a new project, and we actually make it up and walk around with the HTC Vive and say, like, okay, I like this angle right here. Let me save it. And then we walk around, select a different angle, and then we'll take that to whichever artist is going to develop it out. So if it's virtual reality content, that actually will then become the storyboard. So we've taken a rough version, and then we use that to make the beautiful version.
Because our process is very similar to theirs, I'll offer something separate that kind of applies to the overall industry, but there are now tools that are being built. There's actually one being developed out of Georgia State. They have like a Unity developer in residence, I believe, they're creating a tool to develop worlds within virtual reality. So they are doing set design and things like that. Actually, in the program, they're creating it in a headset.
That's very cool.
Yeah, you guys, we ran into each other. It's really awesome. So the fact that those tools are being established, I feel like, especially it's being used in film. Like I know Lucasfilms and ILM, yeah, they actually use virtual reality to kind of block scenes because so much of what they do is CG and post-production to where they can actually see what they're doing. That's a really cool kind of transition over into the film industry.
Yeah, but even though, I mean, that I know a lot about that aspect of it. Even though they get the promotion, they were talking about doing that, like with Clone Wars, they were talking about we don't do storyboards. They did. They still did complete hand-drawn storyboards of the entire thing, because they wouldn't know what assets they even put together and design. But they got the press by saying that we're not using them anymore. So it was, well, looking behind the scenes was a little bit different.
That's true, but I just mean they're starting to use them as a tool. So the fact that these are being developed, I feel like the next generation of content producers, this may be their medium. Like they may not create assets in 3D Studio Max, like they may actually create these 3D models within virtual reality. A lot of people are already doing it with Siltbrush. I have a friend who's making a game for VR, and she's making all of her 3D assets in virtual reality. So she doesn't have to create them on a computer and then bring them in. She's creating them in 3D already. And she can walk around them and actually experiencing them as she's creating them. So it's just a new way of looking at creative media. But even though, yes, they are using it for press, and most of VR and AR things right now are being utilized for press opportunities, the fact that these programs are starting to come out, I think, means a lot for the next generation of content producers.
Quick question about the assets, because a lot of this is about asset production. Are there already examples like Getty Images or Shutterstock that have like these marketplaces of available images, or does everyone have to custom develop their own stuff, or can you go out there and just buy a couch?
Depends on our client's budget.
Well said.
Yes, right. All of us probably have that. So yeah, there are, because of the gaming industry and because developing games in 3D engines has been a thing for a while now, there are a lot of resources already out there. Unity has its own asset store. I don't know if Unreal has its own asset store.
It's not quite as expensive as Unity.
And one of our favorites, which has higher quality renderings, is TurboSquid. They've got really nice stuff. So there are companies out there. If you're a 3D modeler or you're thinking about that career, I think now is a good time to jump in it, and you can make stock images or stock models just like people make stock images for photography. There are actually sites now that do 360 video stock footage too. Those have a lot less content because that's a newer kind of field, but you can find most anything out there.
Yeah, I want to caveat that though, is that not all 3D assets are equal.
No.
So while you can oftentimes get a stock asset that is compatible with whichever program you're using, it may not look great initially. So like if you're buying a stock photo, what you see is what you get pretty much. And the same could be said for a vector illustration. When you buy a 3D asset, assuming it's even compatible with the software that you're working in, it may look okay, but it's all about how the scene is lit and what render settings you use. And if you're using it for a real-time gaming engine, then you might have to think about what scene it's going to be in and bake the lighting ahead of time, etc. So it can accelerate the process, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
I have a quick question.
This will be the last question.
Okay, yes. You had spoken about your friend getting into virtual reality and creating virtual reality. Can that be applications with 3D printing, whatever's created in there? Is that done already?
Yeah, for that particular program, that is already implemented, so you can take your model and automatically print it out in 3D. Jamie, did you want to say something about models?
No,
No.
not models.
Oh, okay. Well, to kind of, since we were talking about assets, another thing when I mentioned earlier, we're doing CAD models, kind of like what Elliot says, you got to change a lot of stuff. We got one model, I think it was like 2 years, maybe 2.5 years ago, and they sent us like the ready to go to the machining place, like CAD model, and every single little thread was on every little screw, and that just bogs the system down. So even though we do use CAD models in our virtual reality program, you gotta like strip it down. So Elliot is absolutely correct. You have to change a lot to make it work, but that's what we do. You don't want to talk about models.
No, I was just going to say about, you know, in terms of our assets, ours are all built from scratch. We don't use that. We just build them.
Well, I think we can all come to terms, I would say, as we were talking a little bit earlier, that VR and AR and all these new technologies are just form of output. These are ways to tell a brand story or your client's or your firm story, whether you're building it for a real estate firm or a conference or concert or any kind of client. So these are just another way that I think communication is actually going to be changing or is changing as people are consuming more and more and more. And consumers are also directing brands now, as opposed to the brands telling you what you should buy and what you should do. So before we sign off, it is coming to a close. I want to be respectful of everyone's time and the heat flare back here. Just one sentence. Oh, it's falling, I'm sorry. I have a mink coat on my neck, as you can see, so you can imagine what's going on here. So one sentence from each of you, kind of what your excitement is about the development and the future of this technology. Can be just something you're working on now, or what you are excited to see and coming up, or hope to see. One or two sentences.
Okay, I can't boil it down to one sentence. I think one of the most exciting things about these new realities is that we're creating memories that or experiences in a way that was previously not possible. So you may remember watching a movie, but you may not necessarily remember where you watched the movie or who you watched the movie with. With virtual reality and augmented reality, it's all about the environment that you're in. And you will remember when you first experienced the particular VR application, where you were, what it felt like, all of those things. It's very extrasensory. So I'm just excited at the potential of what that means for the future.
Oh, you have to follow
I know.
Future us.
Yeah, that is my company's name. Futures, yes. No, I think just as we kind of already said earlier, the technology is changing so rapidly. We don't know what's next, and that's kind of one of the most exciting parts, is that we just get to adapt to whatever we happen to come upon. So for all of you, I would just say keep an open mind and kind of think outside the box and see all the possibilities, because even if the hardware hasn't caught up yet, it will soon, and we'll all, maybe next year or the year after, we'll all be watching this with our glasses. We'll see.
I suppose mine's more of a statement than a sentence. There's things have advanced that much in the last 6 to 12 months that, you know, we talk about these new technologies and they're not new. They're here. It's happening. It's almost kind of like, yeah, the AR and VR world needs to catch up and see where it's the other way around. They're here. It works. It isn't something that you need to try because it works. And I think there's a lot of use cases that say, yeah, actually it does. And that's, I suppose the point is, yes, it's new, but what does new mean? Is it new this week and old next week? Or is it, you know, it's here, it's working, and it's happening now.
I like that. Nice way to close. Well, thank you so much. We give our panel a round of applause. I hope you guys learned stuff. I know I did, and I'm gonna go look.
I learned how to.
And please don't get arrested at Piedmont Park for doing something really stupid like that. Get a good story. All right. All right. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Stacy's requested a group picture of all of you. Stacy from I was able to edit it. Alright, 1, 2, 3, yay!
Are we doing, am I doing one too?
Yeah, I mean, I think.
Okay.
I'm actually going So I would, yeah. I'm still at HSC.
More than